Okay, so hello everyone. It's another Legal Matters podcast. It's Friday afternoon. It's the 12th of June, and today we are doing this podcast in English. I have the great pleasure today to have as my guest Mrs. Patricia Martin, a U.S. Lawyer. Hello, Patricia.
Hello, Christophos. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So, where are you at the moment?
I'm right now in Denver, Colorado.
In Denver, Colorado. Is it a big state, Colorado, or is it one of the mid states in the U.S.?
It's actually a fairly good-sized state, and also the center is Denver.
Okay.
And it's very, very lively, but at the COVID moment, it's not so much.
Are you at the lockdown situation there or not?
We are at a safer at home with a reopening, a soft reopening.
Okay.
So that's the status right now, and we may have to go back into our houses again because things are on the rise since the riots.
Yeah. But here things are getting much better. I mean, since the 1st of May, we have started removing the restrictions, and so far the people that have the virus are those that come outside the island, which seems that the population inside the situation has been contained to a great degree. And you know, we have this issue with the tourism, the income, a huge portion of the income is based on that. So we're trying to get back on track here to save as much of the season as we can. So first of all, thank you for accepting the invitation. We have been discussing this for the last few weeks. Why don't we start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what is your relationship with Cyprus, a U.S. attorney from Denver, Colorado? Being involved in our domestic stuff here is not that common.
True. First of all, thank you. I'm most grateful. This is a wonderful opportunity as well to share some of the things that we have in common besides the common law. And also because we in the world are looking at the effects of COVID-19 on women, in particular in the abuse of women. I first came to Cyprus in 2014. I was there for a year as a Fulbright Scholar, and I was hosted by the University of Nicosia School of Law. I was invited by Dean Emilianidis, and I was able to work on the student clinic, which was an outreach, first of its kind, to extend information to abused women, not just in Nicosia, but in also the cities and some of the villages where abuse against women was pretty much and still remains very much a shameful secret. So, go ahead.
Is this the topic of abuse against women? Is it something that you are involved with? I mean, did you work in other countries as well? I understand that you are an activist on this issue. And why did you choose Cyprus? Was it because of the invitation of Achilles, or?
Very good questions. First of all, I had been researching abuse against women and the various ways in which the legal system in the United States was addressing it in an expeditious manner on a civil platform.
Okay.
In the offshoots of that, of course, we're taking a look at some of the ways in which various states and communities and cities and the attorneys in those states and communities were doing outreach on a volunteer basis to establish clinics in order to help women to self-represent their right to no contact against their abuser. So this went on for a series of years, of course, and I began to realize that the process in which people can self-represent can be fairly straightforward, fairly simplified, and is becoming more so in the United States. These are shared ideas within state to state in the United States. They are online digitalized platforms. And obviously, as the world becomes more and more dependent upon the internet, it was incumbent, as far as I was concerned, to take a look at what the rest of the world was doing in the similar ways. I discovered not much was being done. Moreover, what was happening more often than not is that abuse against women was being handled mostly as a criminal matter or as a family law matter. And as we know, many times, the criminal process is extremely slow. Sometimes it's completely ineffectual. And to have to depend on more evidence in and of itself became an obstacle to justice and access to justice for women who really needed emergency civil protections on an emergency basis on an ex parte arena. So these are some of the platforms that I wanted to share with Cyprus. And one of the reasons why I picked Cyprus, you were about to ask a question.
Finish what you're saying and I will ask you a question.
Because in my mind, as I began to look at Cyprus under the microscope, I saw that since it became a member of the European Union in particular, it remained quite silent in terms of what it was doing, respecting some of the human rights platforms that it had signed onto, in particular, respecting the civil rights of women to protect themselves against abuse. The face of Cyprus, I say, is the face of an abused woman. It is actually employed and deployed and implemented the one remedy that most people need in a civil dispute, which is no contact. So the UN buffer zone serves as a no contact mechanism until the peace can be made, until both sides figure out what it is they want to do at the end of the day. In the meantime, the fighting has stopped for a long time. And that's essentially what these civil protections do.
We will go in detail to this concept of no contact that I know that you believe and you promote. But firstly, what was your diagnosis when you came here as regards the situation in Cyprus with reference to the abuse of women? Do we have a problem? Do we have a lot of abuse to women? Do we have situations that do not come into surface? There are no complaints at the police.
Well, when I first began to focus on Cyprus, there was no information. So it was very hard for me to put the pieces together. But eventually there was a report. It was called REACT. It was essentially I would say a sociological analysis conducted by the Mediterranean Institute of Gender Studies. And it pinpointed that legal gaps within the system were precluding and preventing women from gaining access to court in order to prevent violence against themselves. Once I had that piece of evidence, I was able to put together a proposal for a Fulbright funding from the Department of Interior and the State Department in the United States. It was funded. And it was also at that time very, very much so supported by the Family Court of Cyprus, by Judge Sahidis, who is now—
Sergidis. Mr. Sergidis.
Yes, he is on the European Court of Human Rights now. And I also had a letter of support from the Supreme Court of Cyprus, respecting the fact that there was a need for greater, more comprehensive initiatives which address the problem. Today, we know that through the WHO report, that Cyprus, through the COVID shutdown, essentially experienced over a 30% increase in the incidences that were reported of abuse against women. It also indicated that, the WHO report didn't indicate that, but I attended a UN Zoom meeting recently where the Mediterranean Institute of Gender Studies representative indicated that there were almost 2,000 calls to SPAVO during the COVID-19 crisis, of which only about 230 of them were actually answered.
In Cyprus, 2,000 calls.
Yes, there, and only 200 approximately.
Okay.
A fraction of them were answered. So the answer, of course, for Spavo was not necessarily an answer because, frankly, they answer the phone, they take the information. There aren't enough shelters, obviously, to handle all these women who were seeking immediate protections. So the answer isn't necessarily to always answer the phone.
Yeah.
The answer is for women to be able to have access to court. Under the Constitution in Cyprus, they are allowed to self-represent. And also under the Constitution in Cyprus, of course, it doesn't say you have to have a special form to do that. It basically says you make a written complaint. It doesn't say that it has to be on a special paper. It has to say XYZ. It just basically says, tell us what it is that you want. And it needs to be in writing. So,
yeah, so the idea, I mean, what we are proposing is that women should have free, not free, they have free, in theory at least, they have to have easy access to court, right? The victims of violence or of abuse, they should have the mechanism in place to go to court and very simply complete a form.
Right.
Put their details, what happened, and get automatic court protection. This is what you are saying. Without the involvement of a lawyer or any other intermediary, they should be able to do it themselves as if they go to the supermarket. It should be that simple, right? This is what you are saying.
It should be simpler than the supermarket.
Okay, you don't need a visa.
The supermarkets are.
Yes, but I mean, isn't this a simplification, an oversimplification of the situation, Patricia? Because I mean, you need to go to court. We have the civil procedure rules. You need to give some evidence. This evidence has to be tested by the judge. The other side has the right to present their opinion. I mean,
right. Well, you know, here's the thing. Cyprus has ratified the Istanbul Convention.
Yeah.
The Istanbul Convention was put into force it was ratified on March 1st, 2018, and it was put into force of law in November of 2018. We are 2 years later, almost, and repeatedly, the One Woman at a Time project, which I would like to mention at this juncture, which is called OWAAT, which is an online virtual self-help toolbox on human rights and the access to court, right to self, no contact.
And let me post the website address in the comments here for our listeners and viewers, so that it's an excellent website. I have seen it. I've visited it several times. So yeah, so talk to us a little bit about this as well.
Okay. Under the Istanbul Convention, I like to get back to that. I don't consider the Istanbul Convention until people say it themselves. In Cyprus, it's really the Bible. It is the Bible. If there's a Bible, it's the Istanbul Convention. The reason for that is because the specific provisions of the Istanbul Convention are the most comprehensive mandates that are legal and supreme law in Cyprus, which define for the combating and the prevention of domestic violence against women. I say abuse against women because it doesn't always have to be in a domestic, quote unquote, as Cypriots understand that arena. In terms of the evidence that is necessary, and in terms of the forum that is necessary, the forum is civil. It can be criminal, but in Cyprus, it's more than likely going to be criminal. In the mindset of attorneys, in the mindset of judges, and in the mindset of abused women. That's got to change. When I say, if you can't fix the cracks, break it. And break that thought. Because the Istanbul Convention not only says that judges need, of course, to be listening, that women need to be heard. So it's victim-centered. Self-representation is promoted to the extent that harassment, threat, and any other kind of non-physical abuse is considered to be violence under the Istanbul Convention. Defined.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, it's not just that it has that violence per se as physical violence has happened, or that harassment necessarily would lead to that. But there's a substantial likelihood, and the evidence itself is the testimony of the victim. So there goes the mindset that you can't go to court for a civil protection order unless you've got a police report or if you have a medical record. Absolutely not. The evidence itself is the victim's testimony. And the judge should not be telling the victim, you need a lawyer, because we hear that all the time. OWAAT women tell us, judges say, you need a lawyer, you need the right form, you need a different form, and they tell them that they need a translator. It's like, if they're not speaking Greek, okay, but
yeah, but I mean,
these are barriers to access to court. These are
but this is
the Constitution says that you shouldn't be doing is preventing people who are self-represented, who aren't hiring lawyers. They're walking in with their complaint, their affidavit. They may even have the form. They may have the form.
Wouldn't make more sense and be more feasible if your proposal was that the state has the obligation to set up a unit composed by voluntary lawyers, for example, that could represent these abused women free pro bono, so that they would have access to the justice system? Because what you are saying, I mean, the unhindered access of a civilian, or of a woman, or of a man to any justice system, it's not that easy to happen because of a million reasons. I mean, we all say that access to justice has to be free, easy, and so forth, but this is the theory of the situation. Practically, for a lay person to understand the law, the regulations, the complexities and all, it's not that easy. I mean, I live it every day. I mean, I'm a litigation lawyer, so I have the experience of what it means to go to court and so forth. And also, it is also difficult for the judges to speak to victims, to people that are not represented, explain their rights and tell them what they can do and what they cannot do. So, I mean,
what you're telling me is it's inconvenient. And I'm telling you that's too bad. I'm also saying this. No one knows their harm better than you. And no one gets out of the world without being abused at least once. So everybody in some way, shape, or form understands that when it comes time to talk about the way, the manner, and the form in which you at one time in your life were abused, there's no better voice than your own. You may want to spend a lot of money having somebody not even assert your rights for yourself. But there's no better person than yourself, which could have been why you became a lawyer, who can advocate for themselves. And we are empowering women in this world to say, not only do you have a voice, but that voice under the Istanbul Convention, if it is actually being applied, and it isn't in Cyprus, I will say that right now.
Yeah, there's a problem with them.
It's not being deployed. It's not being implemented. It's not being advocated by attorneys, and it's not being provided by judges. It's not just the victim, but it's supposed to be victim-centered. And victims need to be not necessarily provide an attorney, but be able to know that they can fill out a form and check a few boxes that say, yes, this happened to me. Yes, this happened to me. Yes, this happened to me. Sign it under oath and read it back to the judge and say, I need my right on an emergency basis to no contact. Digitally, this is not difficult. Personally, it's not difficult. Why? Because you know your harm better than anyone else. If anyone's going to save your life, you better save your own.
Yeah. So when you say abuse of women, can you define this term? I mean, will cursing is a form of abuse that would come under the protection that you are suggesting? Or speaking with insulting language, would that qualify?
Well, all right, I'm just going to be a lawyer for a moment and say, how does it make you feel for someone to maybe not even use a curse word, but to tell you that you are a worthless piece of trash?
But a man can be a recipient of such a remark as well, isn't it?
Of course. Of course. Yeah. Now, I have an answer for that, believe me. But please answer that question. Yeah. I haven't used a curse word, but I have diminished your sense of being a human being. That is considered harassment. It's also considered to be a form of threat. It is abuse. And you do that on a repeated basis to someone. And what happens to that person?
Yes,
they
but
are harmed.
You know, the difficulty is to set the boundaries for this kind of behavior, because, for example, with the example that you gave, the danger is that there will be abuse of the abuse. Women will abuse their right to file complaints about abuse, or even men. I mean, it's too general. I mean, you need to be specific, especially if you are looking for a court remedy and an order of no contact or whatever. There must be a threshold that you have to go above in order to qualify for protection. Otherwise, I mean, even a look against a person could qualify as abuse, isn't it?
Here's my point to your question, to your statement, I should say. I find that I've always found that in my time in Cyprus in particular to be a fascinating argument. It doesn't rebut the necessity of emergency protections for the prevention of the risk of harm. Because it's not necessarily an abuse to say, I swear under oath that I am in the path of violence. I swear under oath. Now, the other side will get an opportunity. This is ex parte, mind you, and it's required under the Istanbul Convention. It can be done telephonically. It's done telephonically day in and day out, thousands of times in the United States. Why? To keep the peace. For the same reason that buffer zone exists.
Let me ask you, Patricia, do you have this system in the US? I mean, can you do that in the US with just a phone call to get a no contact order?
Absolutely.
In all states or in
all states have what is called an emergency temporary restraining order application online through the courts. Through the courts. So courts don't say to you, you need the right form without giving the right form. It's unacceptable. If a court's going to say to anyone, you need the right form, they better be providing that right form online. I've advocated in Cyprus that for every form that every lawyer is able to use out of a book, it should be provided online in Greek. The procedures are in English. That's wonderful. Unfortunately, the courts are in Greek. These don't help people to gain access to court who need it most. Who are they? Many times they're foreign language women. Many times there are women who are not sophisticated. They didn't go to law school, but they know how to check a box. They know their harm, and they're not going to lie. If they are found to be untruthful, at the permanent hearing, because the emergency protection is a 30 days. These women, these 2,000 plus women, were looking for 30 days of respite from harm at home. At the end of the 30 days, when they appear before court and the other side comes in, perhaps partner, husband, whoever's in the house that was the alleged abuser, they say, no, she's abusing me. One of the other things that is completely unknown in Cyprus, which I don't know why, is a stipulated mutual no contact. The parties, if they're both what's the harm? If both parties say that they're abusing one another, why shouldn't both parties be signing a stipulation of no contact?
Yeah. Okay, that
Attorneys
makes sense.
are not recommending that either in Cyprus. Yeah. It's not heard of.
In what the way that you are proposing this, the woman would feel, or the person, let's say, because this should be applicable for men as well, right? I mean, you are not saying that it's only available to female persons. Yeah. So they complete this online application or whatever. It goes before a judge. The judge issues the order. Okay. So how do you enforce this order? Through the police?
Interesting. Great question. That's the juncture, not the first call. That's the call when it gets violated to the police. The reason why I say that, most people in Cyprus say to me, the first thing you have to do is call police. And I'm just like, good luck. Okay? And it's not just Cyprus, okay?
Yeah.
Which is why we've got riots in the streets right now. All I'm saying is, no. Don't wait for anybody to save your life. Go file your form in court. In America, we file it online. Courts aren't interested in a lot of paper clogging up their space. Nobody is anymore. This is a paperless world. This is a digital world. These forms don't need special expertise.
Yeah.
I'm an attorney. I don't want things more complicated. Do you?
Yeah. Well, sometimes yes, because that's how we make money.
No, well,
and things are simple.
That's very funny for you, because perhaps you couldn't be subjected to losing your license for saying that. But I could.
Yeah. So in the US, from your experience, has this system helped to reduce abuse against women in the US?
Of course.
There are statistics that show this?
Because we know also that even the level of stalking, the level of stalking is decreased substantially because stalking is so prevalent. And the chances of being killed by a stalker, the report is old, it's like 2009, was at 67%. So all I'm saying right now is that 87% of the people who are being hauled into court on claims of civil protection, necessity for civil protection, emergency orders, the defendants are male.
Okay.
That's a huge statistic. Now, am I saying that all abusers are male? No. But I will say this. Most male abusers were abused as boys and as men. So the cycle continues, be it with men against men.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Women against women. Men against women. The forms that OWAAT provides are multi-language. They are gender neutral. It says he, she.
Yeah.
So if it's he or she, it doesn't really matter. You are basically the complainant and there's a respondent. But the issues are shared. Expediting them from a legal perspective makes sense. Why? Because the Constitution is there to protect a democratic society. In order to have a democratic society, you've got to have right to life, right to peace at home, right to enjoyment of privacy, right to liberty. Abuse is also financial. It's a restriction of movement.
Yeah.
Everyone in the island was restricted in movement for a period of time. Everyone was basically trapped. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, so Cassandra, I know that you have ties with Cassandra. She says that why focus on women? Patricia, the OWAAT tools should be used for men as well. I mean, yeah, you said.
Cassandra, you weren't listening.
So, I mean, your position is that it should be gender neutral. It should be applicable to both men and women, right?
And there should be implementation by the courts, not only of a digitalized system that we can share.
Mm-hmm.
They can pick up the phone and call any state court in the United States and say, who's your programmer? We really like the way your site is set up.
Mm-hmm.
We might want to contract that contractor. Those are models that are basically transferable, literally like that. And getting back to what do we all need to do? Attorneys in particular, to stop saying that the Istanbul Convention doesn't exist in Cyprus, or that is not the law in Cyprus. Get with it. It's the supreme law in Cyprus. Advocated for your clients who can pay you. Tell the clients who can't pay you, here's the Greek copy, read it. And there's a copy on one woman at a time. You can read. You have a voice. And also, it should be on the state bar site. Everything on the state bar site should be accessible to everyone. Everything on the state court site should be accessible to everyone. These links, these are links. These are electronic links. Zoom is here to stay. And telephonic hearings are frequently done when there's a need to protect the witness. They're called in camera. It's an old rule. Let's just make it happen. The United States had to make it happen for COVID-19 in particular because the courts shut down. But what it did is it created the awareness of how expeditious it is.
You know, with the free access to court and the right of any litigant to represent himself or herself, from my experience, our system is so complicated in terms of procedure rules. And I understand the point of view of the judges. And sometimes when we are in the court and someone comes that is either accused in a criminal case or a defendant in a civil case and says that I will represent myself, Your Honor, then everybody goes, what the fuck now? Because he does the procedure is so complicated, the pleadings, the way you address the court, the way you examine the witness, the way you cross-examine, that a lay person cannot cope with the procedure.
I have a comment on that. You know, here is the situation. This is not a TV show. We don't need drama. We need protections, and we need them now. And when we get them, they need to be in the form of a court order. Forget the drama. Not necessary. Forget the papers. Not necessary. Forget all of the frills. No need. We are in a rapid-paced, digitalized world. Let's get it done. Why? Because if you don't, someone's going to die. Someone's going to get hurt. We know it. It's not like it's not in front of you every day. So here is why it's not necessary to act like being in court is a TV show. I have sat in the Cyprus proceedings.
Have you been in the Cyprus courts, Patricia?
Yes.
Have you seen the court?
I have been in the Cyprus courts. I have also seen the proceedings.
In which? In Nicosia?
It's drama. It's in Nicosia. It's drama.
Did you watch the civil proceedings or criminal or both?
Both.
Okay.
I also saw women standing up for themselves.
So it would be interesting to give us your perspective from this experience, from seeing the Cyprus court, the buildings, the infrastructure, and the procedure. I mean, what's your take? What's your comment? What is the takeaway from this?
That's a great question, and those are some of my best memories, actually.
Okay.
They were enlightening. The thing that shocked me was the court clerk's office.
Okay.
I was absolutely horrified by the paper. I just was like, really? What is this? There's not going to be a courthouse anymore. There's just going to be a bunch of paper in all those rooms because they're going to absorb the court clerks into paper. So this is not this is ancient.
Ancient, yeah.
This is ancient.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that really shocked me was the fact that the proceedings were not recorded. There was a transcriber, but there's always that third person piece that when I, as an attorney, keep it. The first thing I say when I walk into court is, Your Honor, this proceeding is recorded, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is because I intend to get the CD when I leave the room. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to need it when I file an appeal.
Yeah.
Because then nobody can say it's not on the record, including the court.
You know that this that you are mentioning, this is a huge issue. It's a very hot topic for lawyers in Cyprus.
I'm sure.
There is a lot of discussion about the recording of the procedure. And at the moment, as you saw, we only have a transcriber or a stenographer, as they are called. And there have been many complaints, and lawyers between themselves discuss about not proper recording in the minutes of the court of what is going on, of certain statements and so forth. And there is a bill before the House now for what we call this electronic recording of the procedure. But we have the problem with the buildings, the infrastructure. And I am not sure when it will be implemented. I mean, it's in the pipeline, but I would say it would be 2-3 years from now. But we certainly need that. And in terms of the trust of the lawyers in the procedure and of all the players. And I don't want to say more about this.
Well, you said that you need it. And that's again, to me, recordations, videos. I could take my computer and video record a proceeding with the permission of the court.
Really?
Of course. Everything we do in court is frankly through our computers. We have screens. You know, juries don't want to look at paper. Nobody's doing paper anymore. So get rid of the paper. I have a paperless office as an attorney. I have my notes in front of me right now, but these are going to get scanned when we're done.
Okay.
Yes, you as attorneys are the ones who are going to ultimately change the face of the situation, respecting women who are abused. The sensitivity, or I should say the desensitivity, is a level of, I would say, missing the mark. The level of tolerance of the kind of abuse, which as far as I can tell, is considered to be logically acceptable, is completely and totally unlawful under your own laws. But getting a lawyer to advocate for a client when that lawyer doesn't even think what happened to the client is worth the judge's time is not going to help the client. So because you say, okay, we wouldn't make any money if we did all this stuff, you'd make a lot more money if you were up to speed.
Yes, of course, I was joking before, okay? So, okay, let's see a couple of comments here from Elsa. She says, is it to say that such easy and immediate procedures available to the victim will help to prevent future abusers? I assume besides the needed protection, the prevention is equally important. Would you like to comment on this, about the prevention?
Great question, great word, prevention. The Istanbul Convention is the Bible of prevention.
Okay.
Combating and the prevention is what it's titled. So do civil protections work? Well, if they don't work, who is liable? The police who didn't answer the call that there's been a civil protection order violation because it's a court order. And guess what happens when that happens? That becomes an AG issue, which, as we know, there's many police who are being investigated, not just in the United States, for violating their oath of office, but in Cyprus. Overlooking the obvious is something that is simply not tolerated anymore. I don't know if I answered that question. These are victim-centered. The Istanbul Convention is victim-centered, and it's in Greek. It's in multiple languages. It's on Greek on the OWAAT Facebook. It's on Greek on the website. But do people want to spend the time to read it? Maybe not. But can it be bite-sized? It sure can. That's something that, of course, attorneys might not want to do. But I think the bar has a bigger job just getting the Istanbul Convention on its website, because it is your law.
We had a case last summer with that girl that filed complaint about rape in Ayanaba. I don't know if you followed that case.
I followed it very closely.
Yeah, so she filed a complaint that she had been raped by some Israeli guys, and then she retracted the complaint, and then she was accused for giving false testimony to the police. And the Istanbul Convention came up, and I participated in a couple of discussions on television and on the radio about this. And the issue that we were discussing is whether the protection afforded by the Istanbul Convention was given to this victim of rape, because that was the initial complaint, and the safeguards that the convention provides were not followed.
Right.
I mean, we discussed this, but the truth of the matter is that people and lawyers and the public don't know a lot about the Istanbul Convention and what it provides and so forth. So I would like to give me your take on that, on this particular case, if you followed it, and what do you think should have been done, and where did we go wrong?
Whoa. Do I start from the end or from the beginning?
Start from where you want.
In my opinion, everything went wrong. So the question is, what went right? Not a lot. Respecting what information that I had, and I did follow very closely. And also I have expressed my opinions to Cyprus on this matter. I will say, first of all, the initial report of this offense as an alleged series of acts by several persons, all of whom were not residents or citizens of Cyprus, was, of course, an extreme violation, in my opinion, of the fact that even if there was a retraction by the victim of any allegations of crimes under the Istanbul Convention, it specifically requires the law enforcement officers to continue their investigation, which they did not do.
Yeah, and they let them go back.
Confession, however they got it.
Yeah.
They immediately released all the suspects, and they did not continue the investigation.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, what they did is use this box, which became a closed box, in a proceeding against someone who had retracted the confession, and basically also stated that she did not know in her subsequent topic of discussion that was a show on this with her. She didn't know what was going on in court. Yes, she had a Cypriot attorney. Yes, she had some sort of interpretation. And I've heard this repeatedly from women who are foreign-speaking, foreign-born women in Cyprus. They do not know what's going on in the courtroom. Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Unacceptable. When women are representing themselves, and this woman was representing herself from the time she was in custody. Why? Because she wasn't afforded an attorney.
Yeah.
She says she did, whether she did or not. Nevertheless, she was representing herself. And there was, of course, no record of what happened to her other than other people who say they were in the room, and they are state representatives. They will lose their job if they said otherwise. Not that they're lying, but I'm saying these kinds of what I would call escape hatches.
Okay.
For lack of a better word, these are escape hatches, which no excuse.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's just no excuse anymore for these kinds of continual violations of women who are alleging they're victims of some kind of abuse.
Yeah.
Physical or non-physical. I don't know if that answers your question completely.
Yeah, of course. Anna Plevri from the University of Nicosia sends her regards, and she says, I have worked with Patricia and OWAAT. Matters of self-representation are directly related with human rights. The procedure itself should not be an obstacle for justice. Yeah, that's correct. And also Anna says that she contacted 3 papers on Istanbul Convention.
Yes, and Anna also was with me when we saw OWAAT basically was so thrilled that the Istanbul Convention was finally ratified, because I always believed that it was the linchpin. But there is no linchpin if it is invisible.
Yeah.
And if it's kept invisible by the legal community. Anna was with me when I came back to Cyprus in 2018, of June 2018, to say, what is the Istanbul Convention and why does it matter?
Yeah.
Hardly anybody showed up. Doesn't surprise me. But worse yet, hardly anybody is saying the Istanbul Convention is the Bible on the combating and prevention of abuse against women in Cyprus. I'm very interested in Cyprus for a lot of reasons.
Well, look, the Istanbul Convention is not known in the legal community. I mean, there is a lot of work to get it out, so that, first of all, lawyers find out about it, and then the public and the women and all people that are affected by it know about this, because, I mean, it gives some tools, some rights that currently are not used. And I am pretty sure that the police wasn't aware about this convention in the case that we were discussing before.
Well, you know, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
And you know, I'm all about the fact that if you've got a good excuse, I'm really ready to hear it, but that is not a good excuse.
Yeah. Elsa here says that any chance to get an opinion of how the media treats the victims when they make the initial report? Is the usual shaming of media treating the victim as the abuser a situation that makes the victim to retract or not even file a report?
That's an excellent question. The holistic approach of the Istanbul Convention is that the media is intrinsically and extrinsically involved in the process of the victim-centered approach to not blame the victim.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent question. Is the media part of the problem? I have not experienced that to be the case in Cyprus.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not reading everything. I read whatever I can that has one woman in it. It comes to me, it flags to me.
Yes.
So, you know, the shame nature is also very much, I think, religious based.
Okay. In what sense? In what sense?
Well, I think that the underpinnings of most struggles in most societies has a religious underpinning.
Okay.
And there's a sociological, there's a doctrine that is, you are here and they are there. And somewhere along the line, there's a place for women in the religious scheme of things, which is why nuns are not popes. Okay. And in some faiths, they are priests, but that's about the extent of it. And, you know, I think that hierarchy and that level of organizing society long ago was how the law and order existed, was through the religion. But now we have the courts and we have the separation of church and state. But in the minds of people, that doesn't change things. And so the underpinnings of, I get to do this to you because I can in my society and I can get away with it. And you have to take it because you must, or you will be shamed by your communities if you don't.
Yeah.
But also the kinds of substructures that ultimately affect women, I think, and men.
Yeah. You know, in Cyprus, my opinion is that we have a huge problem with women abuse, especially in cases that are not reported. There are no complaints. I think we have domestic violence that nobody ever finds out about. And for a number of reasons, patriarchal society, the history of the island, we gained independence in 1960. We don't have the culture that the US has or other countries that have been independent over decades and centuries. So even though the EU has helped joining the European Union, still you see when a woman goes to the police station to file a complaint, she's looked very suspicious. She's advised to go back to the house and try to find a solution with the abuser, which is usually her spouse. So I don't know how many years it will take to come to an acceptable level, but I know for a fact that we have a huge problem, and that's why I wanted to make this discussion with you and try to the extent that it is possible to bring into the surface this problem and try to to get people and lawyers to know about this. So
I would like to check something with something that you said.
Yeah.
Something about time. Of course, you know, one woman at a time is about one woman or one man. Yeah. And then the time is now. It's now when the society is ready because your laws are there. It's when you are ready to say no more.
Yeah.
So whether or not, and this is an interesting little tidbit, I do speak with people in the North frequently. They tell me that the courts in the North understand the Istanbul Convention and readily grant civil protections to women who come before them on their own to ask for them. Now, that is maybe something that needs to change in the south of the island. I think in the Republic of Cyprus, to the extent that there is a same law on the entire island, it's called the Istanbul Convention. We share, from you, I, common law. I can talk to you very freely about your procedures, and I can speak to you very, very intelligently about the things that I think work well in the United States that could be very, very easily adopted and not years from now. I think time is of the essence.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I agree with this. So I would like to take you to another matter now that the time is up in 5-10 minutes. Now I would like you to speak us a little bit about the situation in the US after the murder of the Floyd and all the riots that we watch in the news in New York and everywhere in other states. Of course, we talk about human rights here, right? And there seems to be a human rights issue there as well as regards the Black community. So what is your take on that?
Let's just say that the world is watching. We know that. And the individuals who wish to protect an institution of law and order, including the president, the self-proclaimed president of law and order, need to understand that we do not in this country tear gas peaceful protesters who are exercising their right of freedom of assembly and free speech under our Constitution. We do not pellet gun them. We do not pellet gun handicapped people in wheelchairs who are homeless or push elderly people and women on the streets because they have just as much right to the streets. And we do not kill people because of the color of their skin and get away with it. Now, the fact that this is a video is not just the first video. That's the other problem. The fact that states now and also the federal government is racing to create new laws that protect people from these kinds of abuses of police powers, state qualified immunities, things of that nature that shield wrongdoings by police, as well as the unions that hide and cover up the public citizens' complaints. These things now are on the table. And it is a demand by the citizens in every community who are not necessarily rah-rahing for police, and obviously I'm not one of them, who are saying, we're not waiting for you, Mr. or Miss elected person, to fix this, because we are going to make sure that you aren't in office anymore if you don't fix it. For a white man in Congress, Rand Paul, for example, to tell two black members of Congress the meaning of lynching as not including cuts and bruises, I find to be fascinating. To the extent that it would never go to the Senate without his, in my opinion, extremely dangerous exclusion from the definition of lynching in America means once again, the battle is going to continue.
Did you take part in these demonstrations?
I don't want to get thrown on the ground. I'm not going to, I don't do marches.
Okay.
It's not my thing. I'm all about the people who are marching. I'm right there saying, I'm so glad you're there to do this. My march is every single day. It's called One Woman at a Time. I want to thank also the women like Cassandra and Anna and the men in particular like yourself who have supported these initiatives in order to bring justice, bring access, bring equal access to court for women in Cyprus is our job.
Anna sends us a comment here, and I will connect this with our discussion about the US. She says there is a huge need of training for police officers. They are the ones who should treat the victim the right way, also to inform the victim. So I mean, this is so true, and it applies everywhere where you have a relationship of power and a victim, right? I mean, in the case of Floyd as well, if the police officer was properly trained or informed, he wouldn't have acted this way, right?
No, that's not true. Thank you, Anna. I'm going to respectfully disagree.
Okay.
Training is great. Police get training all the time. So what? They're also trained to know the difference between right and wrong. When someone is putting their knee on someone in a chokehold, which is illegal in itself, and when they say, I can't breathe, they push it down. He was doing a training at that time. The defense of the man who was holding Floyd's legs is that he was following the training of his training officer.
Okay.
I'm not interested in training police. Okay. They spend millions of dollars training police. Police are doing what they want to do because they're having a heyday doing it. They're militarized to do it. They have qualified immunity to do it, and they've got a big fat union that prevents most of their complaints from getting addressed, like the 18 or 17 complaints of the man who killed George Floyd. So thank you, Anna. But guess what? Read the Istanbul Convention, everybody. That's your training book. Go to sleep reading it, wake up reading it, eat your lunch reading it. And Anna did an excellent job in summarizing it as well. It's not rocket science. And the forms that I do believe that are available for every lawyer in Cyprus, those forms should be on the court website for every woman to be able to use and every man to be able to use on their own if they so want to exercise their Cyprus constitutional right to self-represent with a complaint.
Yeah. Actually, it's a good idea to do a podcast with Anna where she can explain the convention and we can break it down and do it in a form to,
we'll call it mini IC.
Yeah. So, Patricia, I would like to thank you so much for this podcast. It's been really informative, very insightful. I mean, getting the perspective of someone like you is always very valuable and very beneficial. There are the last comment. Let's see the last comment before closing from Elsa. Should the police officers have mandatory personal camera on them? Is it to say that this is a measure to ensure the behavior of the police officers is appropriate? So should police officers have a?
A great question. Right here in Colorado, the mandatory requirement of having vest cameras was instituted by the legislature most recently, respecting these rights. The police in Denver County, Denver and City County, immediately filed a motion in federal court thinking, well, we're not going to get a fair shake in state court, maybe they thought. Maybe we'll get a better shake in federal court. They didn't get it. The federal court said...
What was the motion?
The motion was for a temporary restraining order of the legislation, which was initiated in the state of Colorado to require policemen to wear the vest cameras. So we know what they're doing. They're doing it, which I love. Of course, I love recordations. And yeah, they tried that shot. It didn't work. It failed miserably. And the reason for that, the judge said, their argument was, we should be able to tear gas because we're protecting property. And the judge said, no, people before property. Then they said, well, we should be able to use tear gas and pellet guns even if a captain doesn't order it because we don't have enough captains. And he said, okay, then the lieutenants need to be the ones. If there are no captains, then lieutenants. And they said, we shouldn't have to wear cameras because they're cumbersome. And the judge said, well, you don't get to wear cameras if there's nothing happening. And there's always something happening when you're on duty. So he basically tossed them out and he gave them nothing. And that's the action that we need to see happening when police try to pull something over our eyes.
All right. So great. So I will finish with the comment of Maria Antoniou. Thank you both for an excellent and enlightening discussion. Thank you so much, Patricia. Tell us, what is the time now in Denver?
You're pretty good. You're a good lawyer. It's 11:05. You're only 5 minutes over the 60-minute mark.
So I wish you a great day. Have a great weekend. We will keep in touch.
Yeah, let's do IC, a mini IC and me. How about that? The little bullet points. The big ones I already have in my head. So I so appreciate this. Thank you so much. And goodbye, Cyprus, for now.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.